Hello, in this broadcast, the information program Time from the television company Ostankino. Combat activities continued in Grozny today. At night, artillery fire in the capital of Chechnya didn't cease. Since morning, in the center of the city, new powerful fires broke out. Federal forces for several days already have remained in their previous positions. According to the reports from our correspondents, the press service of the government and information agencies, in the center of Grozny this morning, new powerful fires broke out. All last night, artillery firing at blocks of the city did not cease. But the intensity of street fighting is yet gradually subsiding. The gunmen are launching desperate attempts at the cost of great losses to hold on to the central, southern, and southeasterly areas of the city. The Marine infantry who arrived in Grozny were dispatched to reinforce paratrooper forces, motor artillery units storming the building of the former district command of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. The severity of clashes, according to Interfox, is evidenced by the fact that on the level of Russian forces, platoons and companies, there are very few officers left. Combat operations assert that on the Dudayev side, mercenaries are fighting, including those from the near foreign countries. So during combat in the center of Grozny, motor artillery units crushed the firing post of a woman sniper on whom documents were found indicating Belarusian citizenship. The internal forces and the Ministry of Internal Affairs are blockading the basic direction of movement of gunmen and also are covering the border of the Republic. Aviation, during the last 24 hours, exterminated concentrations of live forces and technologies and weapons arsenals of the rebels. In Grozny, the personal pilot of Dudayev was located and questioned, who reported information about the mechanism and certain participants in the deliveries of weapons from Russia to Chechnya. A criminal case has been launched. From Moscow to the capital of Chechnya, especially trained rescuers flew out in order to conduct emergency and rescue work. Also, rescuers are arriving from the Northern Caucasus region. In the suburbs of Grozny, with the cooperation of the Government of National Rebirth of Chechnya, commandants' offices of organs of internal affairs are being set up to support public order. According to approximate statistics, losses among the federal forces in the Chechnya operation are 500 people killed and more than 2 times that injured. Around 200 people are considered to be missing in action. As of today, Interfox has that information. Up to 150 Russian military personnel are being kept in prison in the basement of the presidential palace as well. Within the 8th Army Corps, a burial team has begun to operate, which on 2 trucks combs the streets of Grozny to possibly gather bodies. Journalists are also dying in Grozny. Sad news was conveyed today to us by our colleagues from Pskov. While fulfilling professional duties, the most senior cameraman of the Pskov television studio died tragically. Valentin Alexandrovich Yanos, he was 55 years old, born in Grozny and died in Grozny. On the brink between life or death are the peaceful residents who remain in the Chechen capital. During the last days, immigration services evacuated 450 out of Grozny. No one knows how many remain. Their horrifying circumstances were witnessed today by our personal correspondent, Sergei Amelchenko. From the first New Year's storming of Grozny, for the 16th day, these people are hiding in basements, sitting without almost any food, and during the last few days without any bread or water at all. And so they only surface during moments when not they, but other parts of the city are under fire. In the areas of combat action, they are the last remaining peaceful residents, thousands of Russians, hostages of either one or the other warring side. Here, there's no one to bury. The bandits are probably sitting up high somewhere, and here only honest people remain. We're sitting here hungry. For 2 weeks we haven't seen bread. There is no light, no natural gas, nothing. I ask you, please, to stop this outrage. How long can you bomb us? The Chechens say we are suffering and you're suffering together with us, and not always are people permitted to undertake dangerous voyages, especially in the rear areas. And furthermore, transportation for the remaining residents of Grozny was not organized. Individual vehicles arrived, taking mostly children, if of course they are successful in arriving at a safe loading area. Previously in Grozny, there were several hundreds of thousands of residents. Federal Immigration Services have already registered more than 100,000 refugees. Only in the last few days, 450 people. Tens of thousands are still waiting for help or are attempting to get out of Chechnya on their own. In connection with events in Chechnya, the top Russian leadership again addresses the Russians. Today, the head of the government of Russia, Viktor Chernomyrdin, delivered a television address. Respected television viewers and Russians, I address you on the instructions of the President of the Russian Federation, Boris Nikolaevich Yeltsin. What is occurring during the last weeks and days on the territory of the Chechnya Republic cannot leave anyone indifferent. The fate of Russia is being decided, its national wholeness. Everything which was done was to entrench democracy in our country in the last years. This is understood by all citizens of common sense within our country who are suffering through the events of our common tragedy. Yes, this is a tragedy for the people of Chechnya, deceived by the false promises which sustained enormous losses because of the recklessness of its leaders. This tragedy is for all Russia as well, losing the lives of soldiers, officers, and peaceful residents. I would like to use the opportunity to express profound grief and condolences to the relatives and friends of all those who died during these tragic days. I'm convinced that on the resolution of the crisis in Chechnya, the future of Russia depends, our future. These are not loud words. No country can live with the fact that on part of its territory, the constitution is being trampled. Its laws are fully ignored. The rights and interests of citizens are ignored, and where arbitrariness and violence rule. And so as to restore constitutional lawfulness and law and order on a part of the Russian territory, the federal forces were forced to implement force. I think that it is not yet time to either discuss this decision or its execution. We will still have an opportunity, as we must clarify exactly what occurred. We must find answers to all the questions, and the most important thing is to do everything so that this will not be repeated, so that the nightmare of the last 3 years and the tragedy of the last 5 weeks would fade into the past forever. I'll say one thing. It's not right to recklessly slander the army. The Russian soldier is fulfilling his duty with dignity. He hasn't stained his honor, and no one has the right, with malice or spitefulness, to talk about those who today are under fire. Our main objective today is to stop the bloodshed. We have to now start establishing a normal life, create the elementary vital conditions for people, restore domestic industry, and help refugees to return to their homelands. These are all priority objectives, and we can achieve them only depending on the will and traditions and values of the Chechen people, all the residents of Chechnya. The full address of the Prime Minister of Russia, Viktor Chernomyrdin, will be shown on the television channel Ostankiно immediately after our information program. Restoring a peaceful life in Chechnya and the economy of the Republic is currently seen as a prospective objective, but the first steps in that direction are being made today in conditions of war and with the help of the military. A concrete example in a report provided for our program by the studio War TV, Voyen TV. The bridge over the Terek River here is the only route which passes over the border of Dagestan and Azerbaijan. From here, it's 20 kilometers to Grozny and 9 kilometers to Gudermes. The situation is very alarming. Of course, we seized this bridge together with the special designation OMON units by complete surprise for those who don't want peace and are waging war. And regarding this bridge, we will say they can't forgive us for having seized the bridge. Diversions are underway almost daily, and you can even sense here in our presence that we even now are under the risk of mortar fire, etc. Several times the gunmen attempted to blow up the bridge by dispatching mined trains along the railway from Gudermes. One of the trains included even a tank car with methanol. If it had exploded, the repercussions would have been catastrophic. Luckily, the military railway units managed to derail the lethal train, and because of them, the OMON designation units and the crews of the 2 tanks, for now the bridge is being held, but it's absolutely clear that without reinforcements, the task will be extremely difficult. Today, after a 3-week forced break, the Makhachkala airport has again begun to function. It was closed since the beginning of the military operation in the Chechen Republic. Such a long standstill brought enormous losses to the staff of the airport and also to those with whom it's connected by air routes in the cities of Russia, near and distant foreign countries. Just here, the losses in revenue is more than 1,200 million rubles. Until the diffusion of the situation in Chechnya, passenger flights will be offered only between the capital of Dagestan and Moscow, 2 flights per day, on large capacity liners of the Makhachkala and Vnukovo aviation companies. The transport of passengers and baggage is under special control. This is within the framework of additional measures to tighten the security of the national boundary of the Russian Federation because of the Chechen crisis. Despite the complex attitude toward the events in Chechnya on the part of the Russian regions, they're all unanimous in one thing. Those currently in the Republic need humanitarian aid. Today from Kuzbas, humanitarian cargo was sent to Chechnya. Itartas reports that apart from that, miners of Kuzbas have assembled a convoy with rock coal, and in the next few days, 60 railway cars with fuel will go to their sites named by the Ministry of Emergency Situations of Russia. On board this transport plane, Il-76, there's a humanitarian cargo designated for soldiers of the Nizhegorod district army and militia deployed in Chechnya. Medications, warm clothing, tents, hot plates, foods, everything is acquired through the funds of the district and city administration, donated by companies of the city and the district, and collected by entrepreneurs and residents. And incidentally, this is not far from everything which could fit into the first plane. We're flying over the regiment deployment of our army regiment. The Shumilovsk regiment, which is patrolling the road Grozny-Makhachkala, will be in the area of Khasavyurt. There will be many refugees, and part of the cargo will go to the refugees. The draft law on the state of emergency will be submitted for examination by the State Duma this coming Wednesday. This decision was adopted today by the council of that chamber. The need for that document is dictated unconditionally by events in Chechnya. This law will decide who, when, and under which circumstances has the right to declare a state of emergency in Russia or in a subject of its federation. The President of Russia today, by his decree, confirmed the Minister of Finances, Vladimir Panskov, as a member of the Security Council of Russia, the press service of the President announced. The Ministry of Defense of Russia spoke out today for an all-encompassing inquiry to be launched on the means in which the Chahar-Dudayev regime received military technology. In the Ministry's statement, the awareness is noted in this connection of individuals who occupied posts, leading posts from the years 1991 to 1992. The documents on the Division of Combat Technology, cited currently by Marshal Shapashnikov, were forced measures and are a consequence of the government's lack of action, and personally the former Minister of Defense of the USSR, the subsequent head commander of the Combined Armed Forces of the CIS, it says in the statement of the Ministry of Defense. The acting Prosecutor General of Russia, Alexei Ilyushenko, said today that his department is holding an inquiry into facts regarding cases of refusal of the military, including those of very high ranks, to obey orders during combat action in Chechnya. Alexei Ilyushenko emphasized that criminal charges for insubordination may be filed only upon the conclusion of the current inquiry. Of the concrete individuals who may be accused, the acting Prosecutor General named only the Colonel General Vorobyov, adding that the other such subjects of inquiry are currently in conflict, and he won't name anyone until he receives exhaustive information, which should be amassed by the end of this week. If we establish through the inquiry that there were cases of refusals to follow orders, criminal charges will be laid, and those accused will bear responsibility. This may affect generals or the Deputy Minister of Defense or a private. It makes no difference. Alexei Ilyushenko also spoke of the work of the Grozny garrison established by the prosecutor and the Caucasus Inter-Regional Prosecutor's Office. Among the affairs they're involved in, there are minor and quite serious matters. We received information that on the territory of Ingushetia, a special group of gunmen is setting up bases, which is undergoing training. In conversation, President Alshev stated that he knows of the president's presence of such things on the territory of the Republic, but cannot do anything. Regarding the juridical assessment of the operation, Alexei Ilyushenko feels it can be made only after the combat ends on the basis of a special investigation. To receive a full and objective picture of what is occurring in the zone of the Chechen conflict and around it, it is complicated for many reasons. These reasons are not only because it's a combat zone. Participants of the Congress of Russian Journalists explained their difficulties at a meeting with the deputies of the Federative Council. Speaking on behalf of the Club of Main Editors-in-Chief, Igor Golembiowski severely criticized the executive branch of government, which launched an attack on sources of mass media, because Chechnya has uncovered those processes which were occurring and are occurring in the country. If we, seriously, without any exaggeration or strain, will observe our political horizon, I feel that the only thing that remains from the feeble Russian democracy is mass media. Igor Golembiowski indicated the danger when the bureaucratic apparatus attempts to usurp power and submit mass media into subordination. In the opinion of Vladimir Shumeika, the tragedy in Chechnya has exposed the absence of state information policy. Together with commercial and public publications, there should be state-run mass media sources reflecting the official point of view. Regarding the accusations against the apparatus, Vladimir Shumeika responded. In the apparatus of the President, the government, and Parliament, half of them are dilettantes who float in on a democratic wave, passers-by, or just occasional people, which is reflected in the document labeled as top secret. Now, there are such cadres in the apparatus, and you say that it's taking away power? Well, I say it's half incapable of doing what a government should do. Vladimir Shumeika feels that the criminal money of the Dudayev regime could have ended in mass media's hands through middlemen. These are sponsors or individual groups or parties connected with banks. I think that eventually, when all of this ends and the State Commission will complete its work, these facts of intermediary influence will surface. President Yeltsin does not support any new initiatives to reorganize or combine television channels. He stated this to Sergei Filatov in a personal meeting. The president especially emphasized that it's absolutely necessary to finally give mass media an opportunity to work in a normal fashion. The head of the administration of the president noted in an interview to Interfax on that account that Chechen events test our ability to preserve democracy. In this connection, he emphasized that in certain circles, a striving is sensed to return to unitarian approaches toward television and the press, but one must understand that it will undermine trust in New Russia. An assessment of Chechen events continues to come from the international community. For an imminent cessation of combat and a search for political regularization of the situation, the Secretary General of NATO, Willy Klaas, spoke out today, and he also indicated that Moscow must foremost guarantee observation of human rights in Chechnya. International observers note a certain change in the position of the West regarding the Chechen crisis. And despite the statement that everything occurring in Chechnya is an internal affair of Russia, Western politicians have stepped up their efforts on the resolution of the conflict. They're attempting to stop the bloodshed by exerting various types of pressure on Russia. The European Union, for instance, deferred executing the trade agreement with Russia, and the European Council has announced the delay in accepting our country into that organization. The American Congress makes economic aid to Russia contingent on the situation in Chechnya. The West does not conceal its interest in immediately resolving the Chechen crisis. In discussing the problem, there is a clash of political and economic interests of Western powers, and therefore politicians to date cannot reach a unanimous opinion on what the world concretely can do to help restore peace on the Russian territory. And so going first to Moscow and later to Grozny will be a mission of international observers from the Permanent Council of the Organization on Security and Cooperation in Europe. The American Secretary of State, Warren Christopher, has already stated that this is the first step, which could be followed by the creation of a permanent observing mission in Russia. However, one should not forget that such missions are sent to all hot points and can only analyze and make certain recommendations. At the coming meeting between the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Russia and the Secretary of State of America in Geneva, the head of American diplomacy, despite the desire of Russia, intends to raise the question about the situation in Chechnya. In any case, the meeting between the two long-standing partners, Warren Christopher and Andrei Kozyrev, probably will facilitate a better understanding of the situation in Russia by the West. President Yeltsin, in the current situation, does not feel it's possible to go to Switzerland's city Davos, so that there, in the end of January, he can address the participants of the World Economic Forum. This was announced by the aide of the head of state in international issues, Dmitry Rurikov, today. According to him, the president was preparing to address this authoritative international forum, However, circumstances connected with the Chechen conflict force him to refuse to make this trip. But Boris Yeltsin today did find an opportunity to continue the series of consultations which he began in December of last year with representatives of Russian parliamentary factions, parties and movements. Today, the president in the Kremlin hosted the leaders of the Party of Russian Unity and Accord. Boris Yeltsin met today with the heads of the party, the Russian Unity and Accord, representing in the Duma a unanimous faction. The president said that he is impressed by the work of the faction of Sergei Shachrai because it is unique in balance, calmness and restraint. Yeltsin emphasized that the party has no extremist slogans or behavioral patterns, although he noted that in his view, among members of the party, there are some differences. In response to this, Sergei Shachrai said that inter-party differences have basically been overcome. As is known, the leadership of the Party of Russian Unity and Accord supports the president's position in regards to the Chechen conflict. At one time, Sergei Shachrai, the then Minister of Nationalities Affairs, was one of the first Russian politicians to conclude that it was impossible to continue dialogue with Shahar Dudayev. Today, the Supreme Soviet of Tataria examined the question about electing a new prime minister for that republic. The head of the government since 1990, Muhammad Sabirov, last week submitted his notice of resignation. By majority of the deputies, his request was satisfied. For the last time conducting the session of parliament today was its chairman, Farid Muhammedshin, because today, by decision of the session, he became prime minister of the republic. His candidacy was submitted by the president, Mintimir Shamiev, and was supported by the ex-premier, who depicted the possible future of the republic with a renewed government. In the center of the political life of Georgia remains the recent attempt of an unlawful armed formation, the National Liberation Front of around 800 people, to penetrate the west of Georgia and conduct a crusade into Abkhazia. The majority of politicians are inclined to think that the organizers of the action were pursuing the aim of inciting a new civil war in Georgia and exploited the Abkhazian problem in order to draw refugees into the venture in their hopes of returning home. As a result of the operation to disarm the unlawful formation of Katovani, a large quantity of firearms has been confiscated. 360 people have been detained, in the identification of whom the prosecutor of the republic is involved. Some identities have already been established. Among the arrested were individuals who have been wanted by law for a long time for dangerous crimes. The leader of the National Liberation Front, Tengiz Kotovani, who's currently in the investigating solitary unit, will be accused simultaneously according to several statutes. Edvard Shevardnadze stated today that the disarmament of Kitovani's unlawful militarized group was the beginning of the battle with mafia as with a phenomenon. A sufficiently stable political situation in Kazakhstan makes the economic problems of that republic more visible. Since the new year, work has almost stopped in constructing the Almaty metro. The metro builders are on strike. The metro construction workers are without work, one may say, and housing dilemmas have not been resolved. The major part of the specialists here are Russians who came from Novosibirsk and Bam. They began the construction of the underground route and simultaneously training local personnel. Today, they are forced to take an indefinite vacation without having been paid a single tenge. Only 1/4 of the promised sum was allotted by the government last year for this construction. Hence, the delay in the schedule by almost 3 years. And the government has no money this year either. There is only one hope, that is foreign investments. The main reason for the strike of our metro construction workers is naturally the absence of salary for the workers. In essence, they have received no salary in 5 months. Meanwhile, the transportation problem is one of the most acute. Bus and trolley buses in the area are not replaced. People freeze for hours at stops. And yet the Almaty administration, as you can see, did not bypass its own transportation needs. The portion of the 1.5 and 2-ton pickup trucks in various countries is almost 80%. On that proportion, the truck assembly belt in Gas will work this year. Although a pickup 4-ton truck has improved its characteristics significantly this month through the creation of a Russian-Czech company which produces turbo compressors for its diesel engine. Here, they understand that the leader on the domestic market, the Gazelle, can emerge on the world market only with a diesel engine, but for this investment is necessary. They don't count on government aid, naturally, but they are sure of the support of the population, the future owners of the Gazelles and Volgas. Therefore, an automobile loan is created, and samples of bonds were shown to us by the president of the joint stock company, Nikolai Andreevich Pugin. The small truck has become the locomotive for conversionary plants of the district in their transition to civilian production. At 20 of them, currently there are orders for the manufacturing of various hubs and parts, and so the Gazelle has influenced the economic structure of one of the largest districts of Russia. In the near future, in one of the electoral districts of Moscow, the deputy of the State Duma will be elected. The last such case, in the Mutishinsk electoral district, where the majority of the votes went to Sergei Mavrodie, allows one to conclude that the ballot stations on election day are attended by some people and later others criticize the work of the State Duma. Otherwise, voters should make complaints first of all against themselves and their choice. In the auditorium, there was no place for an apple to drop. Voters of the 18th district of the capital, including the municipalities of Kuzminka, Ryazansky, Ilyichin, Zhelevin, and the village Nekrasovka, met with one of the deputy candidates for the Moscow City Duma, the national artist of Russia, Alexander Abdulov. The people gathered not just to meet with the hero of the screen. They wanted to speak their minds, not in the kitchen or in family circles, but to pour out their hearts here. What is more difficult, to be filmed in a difficult movie or meet with the voters? Because for me, this is my first experience in life. What I saw today, I can say it's more difficult to meet with voters. An actor with 20 years of work in the theater, appearing in 100 films, questions poured out one after another. Why long hair? In which party is he? Should we insist on a ceasefire in Chechnya or not? Abdulov is for the withdrawal of forces from Chechnya and believes in no funds, but completely trusts Gaidar. He's not in any party and will not deal with politics. He feels that giving an apartment to an old lady is not politics. I would like to change everything for the better. But to say concretely that the roads will be better or there will be more sausage, I'm not prepared to answer that right now. On the 22nd of January, elections will be held in the district. Who will enter the Moscow City Duma? Abdulov or one of his competitors, Alexander Lomachenko, a candidate of technical sciences, or Vladimir Fomin, the president of the Youth Law Protection Associations? You, the voters, will have to decide. Another meeting between the presidents of Russia and the United States is planned for May of the current year, and discussion of preparations for that meeting will occur in Geneva at the meeting of the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Russia, Andrei Kozyrev, and the American Secretary of State, Warren Christopher. Today, arriving in St. Petersburg on a two-day business visit was the President of the Finnish Republic, Martti Ahtisaari. This is the first foreign official visit of the head of the Finnish Republic after it entered the European Union. And so now the development of relations with Russia and its northwestern region, our Finnish neighbors, sees more pragmatically, but with no less interest than before. This was noted both during the meeting with the mayor of the city, Anatoly Sobchak, and during the press conference for the Russian and foreign journalists. Speaking at the opening of the seminar dedicated to the economic cooperation and financial investment in the Petersburg region, Martti Ahtisaari underlined that only a democratic Russia, based on the principle of a legal state and respect for human rights, can be a stable and interesting neighbor for Finland and the European Union. In Iraq, an attempt at a state coup was made by a group of high-placed officers of the Air Force. The conspirators, who were headed by the Brigadier General Muhammad Abdulimi, shot at a motorcade escorting Saddam Hussein near the presidential palace in the suburb of Baghdad. Neither the head of Iraq nor any of his entourage or bodyguards were injured. As a result of an exchange of fire, Muhammad Abdulimi was killed, and 14 organizers and participants of that attempt were arrested by security forces. The most magnificent waterfall in Latin America, Foz de Iguaçu, which is on the border between Brazil, Paraguay, and Argentina, after a lengthy drought, again has regained its former power and beauty, and has almost become a symbol of the just-born economic union of the countries of the southern tip of America, the so-called common market, Mercosur. Near New Year, when in the small Brazilian town Ouro Preto, the final document was being signed to found it, the presidents of 4 countries clasped hands, symbolizing the creation of a South American zone of free trade on an area of 12 million square kilometers with a population of 200 million people. 2 weeks later, during the inauguration of the new Brazilian president, the chain of countries became longer. Apart from Brazil, Argentina, Paraguay, and Uruguay, who founded Mercosur, announcing readiness to join it were Chile and Bolivia. As the president President of Argentina, Carlos Menem, emphasized Mercosur was the realization of an old dream of the Latin American people who for years had lived under the heel of military regimes, isolated from each other and from the entire world community. The President of Brazil, Fernando Henrique Cardoso, expressed hope that the common market will give a strong impulse for the development of the entire South American region, which, upon realizing stabilization of its economy in tempos of industrial yield, has already taken second place in the world. Today, the Pope of Rome, John Paul II, arrived in Papua New Guinea, where, on the stadium of the Moresby Port, the first stage in the canonization of the Catholic preacher Peter Toroto will take place, who was killed in the year 1945 by the Japanese occupation because he refused to renounce his faith. Peter Toroto will be the first native of that Oceania area to be included among the saints. The final competition in the beauty pageant, Miss Moscow 1995, was held in the State Concert Hall of Russia. The quite steep prices for entrance tickets didn't discourage those wishing to see the most beautiful girls of the Russian capital. For the royal crown, there were 20 young beauties in the competition who went through the preliminary selection process. Together with them, the vision and hearing of the audience was delighted by famous performers, and other, no less famous artists were on the jury panel, headed by the editor-in-chief of the newspaper Moskovskaya Pravda, Shot Mulajan. The winner of the competition was the 16-year-old 10th grader Anna Menshikova, on whose head a sparkling crown was set by the mayor of Moscow, Yuri Lushkov. Not only women strive for beauty, and therefore the best fashion houses of Italy are taking care of the men as well. The display of collections of men's apparel by the best fashion houses of Italy is being demonstrated currently in Rome. As specialists feel, the shown designs in contemporary style is practical, first of all, but tastes are not disputed. Our broadcast will be continued by information from the sports commentator. All the best. Good evening. As you already probably know, the Russian Kamaz team could not win the gripping rally Paris-Granada-Dakar, and yet the organizers of the race gave our team a special prize for their will to win and fighting spirit. I'll remind you that the crew of Viktor Moskovsky won more levels than anyone else, and on the last stretch of the way ended up in an accident attempting to avoid a clash with a journalist's jeep. The rally has ended. Hockey continues. Today in the International Hockey League tournament, there were 7 matches in the Western Zone. In Moscow, the Capital Army hosted the Army team from St. Petersburg and won 4-3. Tikhonov's protégés held their second straight victory and now are right behind the leaders. From the results of the basic matches, I'll note the victory of the wings of the Soviets over the Yaroslav Torpedo 6-2, Itil Pardogava 5-1, Torpedo Nizhny Novgorod Crystal 3-0, Sokol Severstal 1-0. The match Tivoli Dynamo continues. Today in Melbourne, the Open Australian Tennis Championships opened, the first tournament in the season, and the Grand Slam Series. For now, there were no sensations. The daily victories were held by Peter Sampras, Jim Courier, Mikhail Stich, Michael Chung, and Andrei Medvedev. Among the women, main contenders have not yet entered the battle. In Moscow, the third round of the Russian Mini Soccer Championships has ended among the 1/8 teams. You see fragments of the match between the capital Spartak and the KSM 24 team, which ended 1-1. Ahead in the competitions is the Vis from Ekaterinburg, and potential leaders are 2 other Moscow teams, Dino and Minkas, who still have the third level games ahead. Today, the television company Ren TV demonstrated for the first time to the press the full version of the film 3 Moments of Summer, which tells about one of the most enigmatic people of the country, the attorney Dmitry Yakubovsky. The makers of the film themselves, the journalist Natalia Kasinets and the director Yakov Pasevsky, admitted that during half a year of work with Yakubovsky, of course, they couldn't find out what he was all about, but the wife of General Dima, Marina Yakubovskaya, feels the film is truthful. Of course, it doesn't touch on the events of recently, yet the 2-hour tape is extremely intriguing, and you can be convinced of that yourselves on Channel 1 Ostankino in the evening, the 23rd of January.
Добрый вечер.
Good evening. Tomorrow, from the Atlantic to the north of Scandinavia, another cyclone will move in. It's related to atmospheric fronts which are moving to the east. It will bring to the north of Russia, the Republic of Komi and the Baltic countries, cloudy weather with some snows and strong snow drifts. The temperatures in Karelia, the Murmansk area, the Arkhangelsk district, 0-5, in the Republic of Konya and the Nenetsk Autonomous District, -10 to -15 degrees. On the central Volga, as previously cloudy, with some light snowstorms possible during the day, -5 to 10. In the central and Volgovyatsk area, mostly cloudy weather is expected without much precipitation, temperatures from -4 to 9 degrees. This is the influence of a lethargic anticyclone with a center east of Minsk. In the area of this lethargic anticyclone will be Belarus, Ukraine, Moldova, and the west of the central Chernozem area. It will remain partly cloudy without precipitation, temperatures from -1 to 6 degrees. The weather in the east of the central Chernozem area, over the central and lower Volga, in the Krasnodar-Stavropol areas, Kalmykia, will be influenced by a cyclone. Therefore, it will be cloudy with some possible wet snow during the day, -1 to 6. Over the lower Volga, 0+3. In the republics of the northern Caucasus, it's cloudy with some isolated rain and snow with icy roads, temperatures around 0. In the Chechen and Ingushetian republics, 0+3. On the Black Sea coast of the Krasnodar Rim area, it will remain cloudy with some isolated rain and snow. In the area of Novorossiysk, winds will increase during the day around 0. In Sochi, +5 to 7 degrees. In the republics beyond the Caucasus, cloudy with some isolated rain with snow in the mountains. Temperatures in Georgia, Azerbaijan, +3 to 8. In Armenia, -2, +3. And snow slides dangerous in the mountains. In Petersburg, cloudy with winds from the south in gusts at night, -3 to 5. During the day, -1 to -3. In the capital and district, partly cloudy skies is expected. Some probability of rain at night, -9 to 11. Through the district as low as -15 degrees. During the day, -6 to 8 degrees. Prognosis was compiled by the Oceanic Meteorological Center of Russia. All the best.